Welcome, everyone. My name is Neil Thrussell, and I'm here with Spiritual Warrior Wisdom. And I'm using spiritual warrior and using the term warrior not in the negative connotation that Hollywood has of a warrior, but in the positive attributes of the warrior: the strength, the determination, the courage, the discipline, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to get the job done from a higher place. And I'm really excited to have Pat Cambell with me today, who's the Center for Spiritual Living in Calgary's director. Hello and welcome, Pat.
Hi, Neil. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're most welcome. When I was rebooting my show, I was contemplating and going, who would I love to spend some time with? And poof, your name came into my mind. And I sent out a Facebook request, and you said yes.
Well, I'm counting on you being nice to me.
Of course. I'm counting on me being nice too.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know every little girl in the fairy tales and in the Hollywood version dreams of ponies and pigtails and all of that. But at what point in time did you dream of being a minister?
Well, I wish I could tell you that I just picked that up right out of the chute, but that would not be a true story. What is a true story is that I loved performing and I loved singing and I did quite a bit of acting and public speaking, but I always thought I was going to be a rock and roll star or a Broadway star. And little did I know that the things that I really loved doing back in the day would actually be things that enhance me as a minister. That I pretty much have no fear in front of an audience. You know, I can sing a tune and I can tell a story. So Spirit had an interesting idea of getting me on my path. Let's just put it that way.
And yes, you have a wonderful voice. The joys of everyone, all the spiritual centers having to go online, it allows me to attend so many different services. And I think it was 2 weeks ago I caught yours, and you were singing at with the incredible, and Amy Bishop was backing you
Amy
up. No.
Bishop.
And she's another one I need to get on the show. What a wonderful talent.
Yeah, she is that. And I'm actually a pretty fair singer. But when I came up here, and I used to sing at my center when I was in California quite often, and I came up here and I heard Amy sing, and it was like, I don't think I'll be doing that anymore. I think I'll just leave that to her, and I'll do other things.
Absolutely, she's beautiful. Um, so you just said it. And then, what is a California girl doing way up in the cold, barren north? How was it a spirit? Like, did spirit guide you, or how did you end up way up here as a from a Cali girl?
From a Cali girl to a Calgary girl. I had been at my center I'd been serving for about 15 years and loved it. It was a beautiful, wonderful community. I loved it. I was home. Grew up in Southern California. And when my predecessor, Dr. Carol Carnes, that many people know, contacted me, she said, have you ever thought about moving to Canada? And my answer was, yeah, Vancouver. I mean, Calgary was not on my list. And I was like, no, I don't think that's for me. You know, this is home. And she started telling me all the reasons why this might be a good move for me. A good viable center, and Calgary being a really cool city and being right outside of the Banff National Park, and healthcare and all kinds of other things. And so I really took it to heart and sat with it to determine whether that was going to be a good move for me. And and apparently was, because I've been here 7 years. So I'm thinking that it to my benefit to be here, and I love the people here. It's a great town. It's a great town, great people, great spiritual community, great spiritual people here in Calgary.
So let's go back a little bit. So when you were uncovering your version of spirituality, did you get drawn? What would have been at the time the RSL, the religious spiritual teachings, or did you find other teachings first? How did you end up as a minister for which now is a CSL?
Centers for Spiritual Living. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I promised you a story, and now I'm going to give it to you.
Excellent.
So, I I really loved spirituality. I really loved religion as a teenager, and was very involved with my church and everything. And when I was about 16, I had a meeting with the pastor of my of the church I attended, and asked him some of those questions that only 16-year-olds can ask.
I feel you, girl, because
Yeah,
I
you
was
know
kicked
what I'm
out of
talking.
youth groups.
Yeah. And things like, are you telling me that people who've never heard of Jesus aren't going to go to heaven because they've never heard of Jesus? And he was like, you just have to have faith. And yes, that's correct. And it didn't make sense for me. That's a
I
very common story. That's a very common story. So I left religion and went in the exact opposite direction, and I became an alcoholic and a drug addict. Yeah. Graduated from university and got a job the next week as a bartender. And that started a spiral down for me that was pretty fast and pretty severe. And I hate to say by the grace of God, I don't really care for that term, but I know what I mean by that. Something shook me awake. And I decided to go to AA. And I was 28, I think, at that time. And, AA, the 12 steps, is a very spiritual program.
yes.
And it allowed me to get back in touch with something that I had loved and felt like I had lost as a teenager. And, it's a higher power as you understand God to be. And that worked really well for me for a long time. I'd say a good 3, 4, 5 years. And then somebody introduced me to my first, what is now Center for Spiritual Living. And as so many people talk about, when I walked in, I knew I was home. I'd found my tribe. And
Yes.
yeah, I just knew it, and started taking classes. And one, now this is where the story gets a little trippy, but so bear with me. As a singer, I told you I was a singer, and I had sung at the center that I was attending. And then my sister and I went to a psychic fair that afternoon. And I chose a psychic who laid out my cards as she was reading tarot cards. And she said, well, you have a lot of spiritual cards. And I said, oh, well, I found a church I like, and I'm in AA. And she said, you're going to have a singing ministry.
Oh.
And it is like all those pieces of the puzzle that didn't make sense just kind of lined up. And I said, yeah, I think you're right. And that was in 1989. And, it takes a long time to actually become a minister. And I got my first center in 1998. So, and I've been doing this full time ever since. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you, God.
Yes, congrats. And yeah, it's because your past led us to right here and right now. And it's like we can be annoyed or mad at our past, or we can just embrace it and go, it's just part of who we are. It's like when I was about 14, my best friend, he's still one of my best friends, Dean, we're in his church youth group, and I kept asking questions and frustrating the poor youth minister, because I'm like, if God is benevolent, how can he judge, and how can he? It's like, and so it would just, yeah. So eventually I was asked not to go back, and so I kept questioning, and I knew in my heart a definition of God that certain traditions weren't teaching, and yet I knew that God was within my heart somehow. I didn't know why, but for a 16-year-old, I just knew it, and I knew that it was my truth. And so, yeah, I've been questing for a very long time.
What are some of the traditions that you've quested and looked into?
I've looked into, well, the traditional Catholicism, Lutheranism, Judaism. I looked into briefly, and I've talked, and it was mostly conversations with Sufi, Sikh, Buddhist. Yeah, so and then I went and I spent time in an esoteric mystery school, so
Nice.
some of the ancient teachings. So I've never changed my definition and my feeling of God. It's just my understanding as I've traveled and done various things has just deepened.
Right, right. I think that's true. You know, once you kind of find the concept that works for you, then it is just it's a deepening, but it's also an expanding. So it goes down, but it also goes up and out, or at least that's been my experience as well.
And for me as well, yeah, it's wide. It's all encompassing. And
Yeah,
in all, for me personally, as we go into the tragedies that are occurring, the sympathy for others suffering is immense, but it's also recognizing, for me, recognizing that it is their journey. And it doesn't stop me from feeling empathy and sympathy, and my heart doesn't go out from them, but I recognize it is their journey and not
that's
mine.
That's right. That's right. And when we try to put ourselves on their path in order to help them, if you would only listen to me, if you would only just pay attention to what I'm telling you, you won't have to suffer. And I think about my poor parents, the nicest, most mainstream people that you could possibly imagine. And here I am over here, you know, drugs and alcohol, and then this kind of weird religion, and they didn't know what the heck was going on and all that other kind of stuff. And yet I knew what was right for me, and even though it has changed and it's deepened, I knew what was my truth. And no matter how much they told me, no, you're making a mistake, I had to be on my path and
Yeah,
recognize that they were on their path as well.
yeah. And um, what I love personally about this Center for Spiritual Living is some of Ernest Holmes' teachings are, they've either just reworded beautiful passages and beautiful lessons from the Bible and just he's put it into different ways and different ways for me to process it and to think about it, as compared to reading the Bible is traditionally in the way it was. I love Ernest Holmes' work.
Thank you. You know, I do too. People, you know how you always play that game is who was the person that was the most influential in your life or, you know, whatever. And I often will use Ernest Holmes, who, if the people who are listening don't know, is the founder of what we call the science of mind. And I always have to then make the caveat that says not Scientology and not Christian Science because it's just unfortunate about the names. But he wrote a book in the 20s that has very old-fashioned language and extremely relevant lessons. So if you can work your way through the really antiquated language where it's just like, oh, nobody talks like that anymore, and be able to get the truth out of it. I'm sure people feel that way about the Bible as well, but get the lesson out of it. It's providing tools and techniques and ideas that are relevant for today, particularly relevant for today.
And actually, I think one of the blessings of it being written in the old way is it stops, for me, it stops me from just breezing through it, because I need to read it and understand not the paragraph, but the actual sentence. So that
Yes.
and so I grasp the sentence, so then I can honor the paragraph. Because many people, when they read now, and then they get the whole paragraph, but they miss the depth of the sentence.
I would say that was true for a lot of the great teachers, and but I don't mean, I mean old timey like 100. I don't mean old timey like 500 years ago.
Yes.
Emerson, who was a great influence on Ernest Holmes, same thing. If you try to read Emerson as a novel, it's not going to work.
No.
You have to take each sentence and really chew on it to get the depth of it. I know you attend a Unity Center, the Fillmores. They're teaching also, even though it's old language and old teaching, it is still, it's so juicy. It's such good stuff.
And it's interesting. One of the things that I like to do is, if I go and learn from someone, I want to know who their teachers are.
Right.
And so I want to know the lineage. And we look at many of the modern masters, Wayne Dyer, who was his teachers, and Tony Robbins. You go back into Dr. DeMartini, and a lot of them take work from Ernest Holmes or Napoleon Hill.
Yep. Yep.
And it's like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. There's deep, if you pull it apart sentence by sentence, there's deep spiritual meaning into a lot of his works.
You know what I say, Neil? One of my favorite teaching phrases and just life phrases is truth, no matter who says it. I certainly will quote Ernest Holmes or Emerson or Dr. John DeMartini or who's that other guy that everybody loves right now? Dispenza. Joe Dispenza.
Yes,
or wherever I find truth, because I believe there is truth that goes through all of these spiritual teachings and all of these wisdom teachers. We're teaching the same thing. We're just calling it something slightly different.
Absolutely. And it's like if we go back hundreds of years and take any one of the 82 or 81 verses of the Tao Te Ching, like that in itself is a spiritual lessons.
You bet. You bet.
And really, I think for me, a lot of these lessons are just asking us to be present to the here and now, and to be mindful of all of the actions that we're doing and experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Funny you should say that. During this time in the world that is just so crazy, there's no other way of putting it. We're just living in crazy times. It's super important to me that I am talking, when I do a Sunday talk, that I'm talking and doing talking about things that are relevant.
Yes.
And it's so important. I mean, how easy would it be for me to be up in my ivory tower and talk about these kind of esoteric theoretical things? Well, that's not what people need right now. People need, what they need right now is, how can I feel better when my what is being handed to me? And so this coming Sunday, I'm going to talk about living in the moment. It's very important, because if I allow myself to start thinking about the past, and oh gosh, I'm gonna miss this, maybe it'll never return, and oh gosh, I really lived, then it makes me sad. If I start thinking about what things are gonna be, and kind of get into the fear, then I get freaked out. So
Yes.
I have to consciously remember to bring myself back to, and now I'm sitting at my home computer talking to nice Neil Thrussell, talking about spirituality. So right now, I don't have anything to fear. And right now, I don't have anything to be sad about, if that makes sense. So it's that living in the moment that is just so, it's so crucial, especially now.
Yeah. And the only caveat I have is, to whatever you're feeling, to anyone that's out there, it's not wrong to feel that way.
Correct.
If you're feeling sad, be sad. It's what you do with it once you finally recognize what's going on and you become cognizant and conscious of what you're feeling. Then you can add, how is this serving me, or is this not serving me?
There you have it. Yeah. There you have it. And certainly have had the sad times, certainly have had the fearful times. And what I find is, when I go to those places that start to drag me down or freak me out, then I need to bring myself back to, and here I am now.
Yeah.
And here I am now.
Yeah. So what is one of the tools that, because you've got access to a whole plethora of tools through your years of leadership. What is one tool that you use to get you back to here and now?
Oh gosh, just one. I can only have one.
That's true.
Well, probably the simplest one is remembering to breathe. And I know that sounds like it sounds almost elementary, but it really isn't. It is a grounding exercise. It is a way to allow us to get centered and grounded. Athletes know it, and spiritual people know it. And we spend too much time breathing from up here for whatever, instead of, it's amazing what that'll do. I don't know whether Ernest Holmes taught breathing. I know that yoga teaches breathing, and I know that it helps me. So there you have it.
Yeah. And yeah, for me, if I find myself crunchy, I just need to go for a run.
Good.
And it's one of the easiest. Some of the times the hardest to motivate, but it's what, for me, running is meditative. Like, wherever distance I'm going to run, the first third is always, the last third is, oh my God, what the heck am I doing? But that middle piece is just sweet.
Now, do you run like marathons and stuff?
I do. I'm training to run a marathon, whether COVID-19 permissive, in October.
Oh.
In Prince Edward Island.
On where?
Prince Edward Island.
Oh. Gosh, I hope that we are back to doing that kind of thing in October.
Me too.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But yeah, see, I don't know what it would look like, because I know that no large gatherings in Alberta till August 31st. But what happens after that, I don't know. So yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit of a blow to me when that announcement was made, because we were able to just really hit the ground running with doing our Sunday service. We were already set up to do live stream. We were already set up to do all that. But I was thinking it would be weeks.
Yeah.
Possibly 6 weeks. Maybe mid-May is what I was thinking in my mind. So when that came down that there were no large gatherings until after the summer, that was a bit of a blow. I have to admit that shook me a bit. And I'm grateful that we can do what we do.
Yeah. And I think it was 2 weeks ago I watched your service, and your technical team is doing a wonderful job. They have attracted you, or you attracted the right people to help you with the service, and Amy and the rest of the band, or the band and Amy, however they go by, is phenomenal.
You know what? You are so right. And I'll tell you that when we first looked at this, we didn't think that we would be able to have the band because I mean, they're professionals. It's not free. And, and what about copyright and all these other things?
Yep.
And when I mentioned on a Sunday, the first Sunday we were full live stream, that we hoped that we would be able to keep the band and weren't sure. We had 2 different people call me and say, what does it take to keep the band for a month? And I told them, and they wrote checks, and we were able to do it. I mean, it was just incredible. So when people talk about the music, there's no doubt about it. What our service provides, I would think, is this fabulous piece of music, this fabulous aspect of music, combined with a talk that is relevant for people today. And I think that that's what people are responding to, because we have a larger viewership than we have people who have been sitting in our seats for the past year or so. Hi, Shirley Campbell.
She previously wrote good evening, and it wasn't quite spelt right, so I put I put this one up.
Well, Neil, may I tell you why that's even more startling than you can ever know?
Okay, do tell.
My mother's name was Shirley Campbell.
Oh my. Oh, there we go.
When I met this Shirley Campbell a few years ago in Kelowna, and she told me her name, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me. So here I'm doing this, and we've talked a lot since then, but here I'm doing this show, and up pops my mother's name.
Oh, this is beautiful. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, it's beautiful. What I know to be true is music, and I believe you would think music transcends all languages, all spiritual beliefs, and it just goes, to me, it's like right to the soul.
Straight in.
Yeah, it's like, if the song is meant to invoke whatever it's meant to invoke, happiness, sadness, love, joy, doesn't matter. It just, all languages, all cultures.
Yes. You're not going to get an argument with me. You're not going to get an argument from me. Okay, I'm looking forward to it, Shirley. Oh, music. I'm sorry. My mother's coming to visit me. No. Okay, I'm not at all freaked out. No. There is something about music, and I think it bypasses all of the guardians to get right to that soul place. Because I could give a bang up talk, and I know it's a bang up talk. And what I'll hear from people is, oh my God, the music was just, you were good too, Pat, but oh. I've just learned to live with that.
That's why we just have to learn to love Amy even more.
Yes. I'm sure she'd love to be involved with something like that. She's also a practitioner at our center also. So a
Yeah,
practitioner is like a, for lack of a better term, simplifying, like a spiritual counselor's kind of, sort of.
yeah,
Takes a certain amount of schooling.
yeah. So music gets right to the soul, and and um, when I was trying to decide why so many centers were so small, I went and looked at what made all of the mega churches in the States so successful. And yes, they have to have a charismatic speaker, but all of them have a phenomenal music program and a phenomenal audio visual program that goes with it.
Yes.
So I'm like, so the talk is like, say, 1/3, and then the band is a third, and all. And so it's like all of those together, and it's just like, and to me, then it takes all of the learning styles, the kinesthetic, the audio, the visual to get it, because people are dancing, they're feeling the music, and it's like, and that to me is a real change in spirituality, is that we, like many of the traditions, many spiritual programs now are invoking all of the learning styles, or all of
Well,
the successful ones. If they're not
yeah.
willing to invoke them,
Yes, I think you have to. So you think back, Neil, to when our parents went to church. They would get dressed up, they would go to church, they would sit, they would listen to the sermon in the choir or whatever. Then I don't know your age. Are you a boomer? Are
yep,
you okay? So then the boomer generation comes along. We had television, right? And so we were used to a certain entertainment value for our stuff. And then each generation past ours has gotten more and more accustomed and expecting to be entertained at the same time as they are being educated.
yes,
And I think you absolutely have to give people, I mean, why would somebody come to a Sunday service if it was boring when they could sit at home and watch Michael Beckwith do a service from Los Angeles? You know?
absolutely. And yeah, his services are beautiful.
Yes. Excuse me, I need to make a point. Don't stay at home and watch Michael Beckwith once we come live again. Come back to the center. Okay, I'm done.
Absolutely. Or if you're going to watch Michael Beckwith, watch it on a replay,
Yes. Yes.
not at
Come
the
back
same
and get
time.
hugs.
Yeah,
I need hugs.
yeah, not at the same time as Pat's service.
That's for sure. That is for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, that's also changing. Like many spiritual centers, the old handshake was the way of it. Now I'm really liking, prior to COVID-19, that many faiths, it's becoming more and more acceptable. Like, man to man, you could give the guy a hug before. Oh my God, son. Absolutely. And I only hope that the fear from COVID-19, when we're all getting back into our services and we're back into our tribes and communities, that we get back to the hugging, and
Well,
not and get back to it quickly.
yeah. I agree with you, and I think that I think we need to all move back into things smartly,
Yes.
and I don't know what that's going to look. Oh, thank you, Shirley. That's nice.
You've got a fan. I don't know, whatever you're gonna have to owe her, a couple hugs or something. But
We should have
everybody
told
needs a
you
beautiful fan like Shirley.
Ramona.
So thank you, Shirley, for interacting with us. Thank you. And for the rest of the viewers, we don't bite, or so far we haven't bitten anyone. We don't bite for now.
Yeah.
You know. So this is a good. Let's do a plug. So when are your online services, and how would someone who wants to go to that says, "Hey, Pat sounds pretty cool. How do I get a check it out? What's the best way?"
The best way, if you are on Facebook, go to our Facebook page, which is Calgary Center for Spiritual Living. Our meditation starts at 10 o'clock, and that's done by one of our practitioners or ministers. And then at 10:30, we have downbeat at 10:30, and we start the music, and we have our Sunday celebration then. And that's music and some spiritual practice and a talk. If you're not on Facebook, you can find us on our webpage, which is calgarycsl.org. That's calgarycsl.org. And just go to that page, and at the top of the website, the video will come up once we go live.
Okay, I was trying to make one.
Yeah, there you go.
No.
Nice.
There we go. Because bottom line, you've been a wonderful guest. So and I want people like if they're what I love about this CSL is it's family, it's home. Wherever you are in your travels and your journeys, you're welcome.
Yes. No question about it. Absolutely no question about it. And we are finding that people are still even finding a sense of community, even though we're all online. I mean, there's a chat feature, and people are, "Hey, how are you? Oh gosh, I'm really miss seeing you." Blah 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 blah. And even new people are starting to do that as well. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
If we have to not be face to face, it's not a bad way to go.
Absolutely. So once you're done, so what is online done to your services? It changed it much? How are you finding reaching and really connecting to people online versus like when we all know when we're together, there's a different connection. But how are you finding it as you bring your message online?
One of our members, one of our practitioners, did something that is so cool, and I just love it. When we first started needing to be online, she reached out to a bunch of people and got their photographs and printed off their photographs and taped them to all of the chairs, about the first third of the chairs in the sanctuary. And people are still sending their pictures in, which is cool. And
That's
then, so
cool.
when I'm standing on the stage, delivering the service or giving the talk, not only am I addressing the camera, because that's where all the people are, but I'm also being able to look out at the sanctuary and see the faces of my beloveds who are there in spirit. So
Yes.
that has been a really cool thing. Now, I'd rather have the physical people there, but in the meantime, this is pretty cool. This has actually been quite nice. Been quite nice to look out at.
Yeah. Wonderful. So, as with all centers, training. So, what are the some of the things that this we'll move to the center and then we'll move back out to us talking. But what are some of the trainings that the center offers?
Trainings, you mean as in classes?
Yeah.
And that type of thing. So, when Ernest Holmes, our founder, first wrote his book called The Science of Mind, he never intended it to be a church. He always intended it to be a teaching. And so the teaching and the education part of it is hugely important. And so we always have classes running. We may take a few weeks off here and there, but classes are ongoing at our center. For somebody who is just new to the teaching or just new to our center, I always recommend that they take our foundations class, which is a 10-week course. It gives you the basics of the teaching, and it's experiential, it's fun, it's again relevant, and it really gets you on your path to kind of understanding exactly what you were saying, Neil, that there's a commonality between all of us, and we're not as different as we think we are. And then after that, we offer just a number of different classes on meditation, or on a particular book, or a particular deepening your prayer practice, all of those different things. And then if you decide that you would like to, and you've taken the required classes, and I'm not going to get into the details of that, then you can go into our practitioner training. And like I said, that, for lack of a better term, they are like spiritual counselors. And but it's a license. I mean, it's a pretty rigorous teaching. And then once you become a practitioner, if you are still on fire about it, then you enter into ministerial training. And within about 7 or 8 years, it's not a short process. Within about 7 or 8 years, then you too can be a licensed minister.
Absolutely. So what is some of the things, like, you became a minister?
Mhm.
A couple weeks back, you became this minister. So, so what have you done since then to deepen your practice? Like, every day, like, learning never stops, or in my belief, it never stops. So what have you done to help you deepen your own spiritual practices?
Excellent question. The first thing that comes to my mind is that when you teach it, you learn it at a different level. So there's one thing to say for that. Ongoing classes, teaching it, you've got to do the work along with everybody else. In addition, anytime I can go to a retreat in a beautiful place, I try to do that, because my heart sings in nature. I go to a lot of conventions and that type of thing to learn actual ministerial skills and that type of thing. But one of the best things that I did for myself, actually, I guess it hasn't been that recent now that I'm thinking about it, is that I took yoga teacher training.
Oh,
And
cool.
yep, I wanted everyone to be able to learn how to practice yoga, the breathing that we talked about earlier, the different postures and poses, and everything else, and the yogic philosophy that goes along with it. And I didn't want people to be hung up. I don't have a typical yoga body. I've got a round, full figured body. Well, you know what? I can still do yoga, and so can you. And so I wanted to be able to teach anybody that they too could learn how to work with their bodies in that way. And that deepened not only the physical part of it, but also, just because the yogic philosophy is so complementary to ours, that really, really deepened me.
Cool. And as I really resonate with the warrior type, and for me, many martial arts, not all, but many, many martial arts actually have immense spirituality into them,
Oh,
into the fundamentals, like in the beginning, in the early, even though they may be teaching, like the samurai, very, very spiritual. And like, they're teaching people, the ancient samurais, how to, the Bushido code, to do terrible things to another person. But on the other hand, they're also teaching them calligraphy to balance out this lethal weapon inside of the harnessed inside of each of the samurai.
I think there's absolutely true that martial arts is not just the movement part of it, it's the mental part of it too, and the discipline that goes along with it, I would think.
Absolutely. So we're coming up to our 45 minutes, and I tend
Wow.
to, yeah, it goes by really fast.
I guess.
So if you were to leave our listeners with anything, a little something that you would like to leave them with, I'm just putting you on the spot.
Yeah, you
What would
are.
it be? Again, what would it be other than stay safe, have a great day, enjoy your life? Well, that's okay too. What would you like to share and impart upon our listeners or viewers, wherever they are and however they show up?
The thing that's coming up for me is something I like to remind my community of on a regular basis. And uh, not, I don't think people can hear it often enough. And that is, you have the spark of the divine within you. All of us has the spark of the divine within us. It may be very, very covered up. It may be just starting to show, but the fact of the matter is there's nothing you can do to diminish or to put that light out. And so to me, what spirituality is about is giving ourselves permission to to let that light, it sounds so cliche and I don't mean it to be, but to let that light shine in the way that is unique to you, because there's nobody else who is just like you. You are unique, you are special, you are a thread on the tapestry of life, and the tapestry would be incomplete without you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And what a wonderful way to end. So thank you, Pat, for being part of today's show.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. I
You're
was
welcome.
quite a pleasure. Thank you.